All right, here we are, Dan. The Varsity Voices podcast. You can catch us everywhere, right? We are
Everywhere.
on all the podcast providers. We're on Spotify. We are on YouTube. We are on Amazon. We are on Apple. We are on, let's see,
Odyssey.
what else? Odyssey, Listen Notes, and all these other ones, Dan. So people
How
should
did you find all those, Joe?
Yeah, you know what? It's amazing what you can do when you got a little time on your hands, Dan.
That's a lot. That's more than I've even heard of.
Right. Yeah, and there's more than that, but I don't even have a list, so I can't tell you. But, anyways, we appreciate you listening, and make sure wherever you're listening from that you like us. What else do we want them to do? We want them to subscribe.
Yes, and follow.
Yep.
And
anything
comment.
Else? Comment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us you like us. We need a little reassurance.
Yeah, maybe contact us every now and then, right? So we know somebody's out there listening to us.
Yes. The numbers that show we're getting listeners.
Yeah, we have
and
listeners.
Our audience is growing.
Yeah.
Growing. We planted the seed. We've watered it. We've had some nice weather. It's starting to grow.
Right. Best time to grow listeners is in the spring or fall, from what I've read, right?
Okay. Yes.
Just like grass seed.
It is. It is. There's a reason it's like that.
And we're also on social media, Dan. So, I mean, people can follow us there and stay in touch with us there as well. We're on X. We're on Facebook. Where else? We're on Instagram. We haven't ventured into TikTok yet, but I think we're going to do that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be the next hurdle.
All right, so people, keep listening. Tell your friends, and like, subscribe, and follow to us.
Yeah, people can't get enough of our video and our faces, so it's time for TikTok.
That is true. Yeah, you make sure, and where they can only see us, Dan, is on our Friday Night Blitz episode so far.
Right. Yeah,
but
join us in our studio.
Yeah, we're both working hard to get ourselves in shape, and we've been working on our skin and stuff like that.
Yeah, camera ready.
Our appearance, so maybe future episodes like this one, they'll be able to see us because we'll be ready for that, right?
Your office, you've got a nice decorated office.
I do.
Yeah.
I've got a little plant behind me. I've got some footballs, a couple of pictures. I like the way your office looks, with the very contemporary, modern look going on in the background. So
the wood
wall. The wood wall. People appreciate that. So maybe we'll promise people that we'll do a little more video going forward and not just audio. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Give the people what they want.
Give them what they want. They want to see you, Dan. Yeah. They do. They want to see you. The comments we have gotten. That's all they've been about.
Show
like,
more Dan.
I need to see more Dan.
Yeah, there's plenty of me.
We give them what they want.
Yep.
So we're here with our Prognosticus episode, Dan. Another one, right?
And, our fifth one.
Wow, week 5.
Yeah.
So can you believe that?
Joe, at halftime of the games this week, we will be officially at the halfway point of the season.
Halftime of the games this week, we're officially at halfway of the season.
Yeah.
All right, I get it.
It's gone fast, hasn't it? Yes.
Really?
From my coaching days, it'd be like, we just started, and it was 95 degrees, and now I'm freezing. So that's by the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some games where it's going to be freezing, right?
Yeah.
Coming up in the next several weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'll be good to be watching from our studio.
Yeah, you and I will be just fine.
Just fine. Yeah.
Used to be out there in the elements.
Right.
Now we're in our offices or in our basements, and we don't have to go out there in the cold snow and sleet.
Right. So people don't have to worry about us on Friday nights.
No,
we're fine.
Yeah, I don't think they were worrying.
No?
At all.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have to.
Anyways.
Let's make some picks.
Let's make some picks and predictions. We've got some really good games coming up this week, Dan. As usual, and based on the outcomes of some of last week's games, it's going to be really interesting to see this week and how some of the teams do. One of the things you and I, let's see, we talked about, maybe we mentioned it in our recap episode, but how many undefeated teams are there left in the CCL, Dan?
Wow, well, let's see. There are none in the blue, which I think is a bit of a surprise. There are none in the green, which is also a bit of a surprise. There are none in the orange, Joe. There are 2 in the purple, both with
Two in the purple.
2 in the purple, both with big time opponents this week.
Who's that?
Is Benet,
right?
And let's see, and DePaul Prep.
And DePaul Prep.
Yeah.
And we've got one more.
St. Lawrence.
St. Lawrence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
St. Lawrence, who, I don't know why I think this, but I feel like they've been kind of lurking, right? Here they are, 4-0 going into week 5. We knew they're a good team.
Yeah.
But nobody's been talking about them that much, although they broke into the, I'm a rankings guy, they broke into the top 25 rankings. They're number 25, at least in the sometimes Super 25 dance. So they can't fly under the radar anymore.
No, they're squarely on our radar. Big blip.
Big blip, for
big
sure.
Blip. Beep,
for sure.
Beep. Yeah, big loud blip.
All right, but other than that, so we got 3 teams left undefeated. Other than that, we've got several teams with 1 loss, and teams that are a lot of other teams that are in that top 25, even with 1 loss. Again, the conference is strong. The conference is good. There's going to be some really good games as this comes down to the wire, and these teams are fighting for their playoff lives. Dan.
Yeah, we've got some backs against the wall this week.
We do.
How did we do last week, Joe?
Yeah, let's talk about how we did last week in our predictions, Dan. So overall, we were both 9-3. How about that?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Previous week, I think you were 500.
No, I was 5-7, and you were 6-6.
Yeah, I was 500. You were 5-7. All right. Thanks for reminding me.
Sure.
This week we're 9-3, both of us. I think. Let's see. We had some games that a lot of them we picked the same, Dan. Where we were different was I picked Fenwick over Montini, right? Which Fenwick won that game. Let's see. Where did you pick differently than me? You picked Joliet
Catholic.
You picked Joliet Catholic over Marist, and I have Marist. So that's our one game where we differed. The rest of them, as far as the wins go, we all picked the same team. So that's a pretty good week if you're a betting person. You go 9-3, don't you think?
Yeah. If there were actual lines, well, we don't want to go there probably, but
probably not.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe can we set that up with one of the sports books?
Say that is a big no.
That's a big no. Yeah, the high school sports book. Yeah. I feel in a budding idea, Dan. That's a big no. Okay, all right. I take your silence as a big no.
Big no.
All right. So let's go to our first game, and we've got one Saturday game this week, Dan, and it is Brother Rice and St. Patrick. We won't be covering this on Friday Night Blitz because it's on Saturday, but Brother Rice, and this is going to be it's neutral location. It's going to be at Triton College. So Brother Rice lost last week to Loyola 28-21. Dan, Brother Rice has lost their last 3 games by 1 touchdown or less.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so they're 1-3. And we've said this before. Was there any way you thought Brother Rice was going to start out 1-3 this year? I didn't.
No, and I feel pretty comfortable saying that they're the best 1-3 team in the state. So and we talked about backs against the wall, Joe. They've got to be frustrated by their close losses. So it's probably, there's probably a little bit of anxiety is probably the wrong word, but they have to be feeling a little bit the pressure, and they need a win. And I think
they do.
Yeah, I think because of that, and then on the field, the emergence of CJ Gray as runner and passer, and they're typically really good defense. I think they're the pick for me this week over St. Pat's. So I think they take that first step in making sure that they are playoff eligible. We can look at the schedule for the season. They have to take it one game at a time. And if I'm their coach, I'm saying every game's a playoff game. So
yeah, for sure.
I think their backs are against the wall. St. Pat's is 2-2. Not that they have any room to spare, but not quite feeling it in the same way Brother Rice is. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that my pick is Brother Rice for that game.
Yeah, and St. Pat's this is a little bit of a surprising outcome to me, but they got trounced by DePaul, 41-0.
Yeah, me too. That was a surprise.
St. Pat's I think they gave up an average of maybe 16, 18 points over their first 3 games, and then they give up 41 to DePaul. So obviously we thought the strength of St. Pat's was their defense, and last week that didn't necessarily prove out. They're going to face a really tough opponent this week in Brother Rice. So I'm with you on this one, Dan. I'm going with Brother Rice over St. Pat's.
Okay. Who do we have? Should we stick in the...
Let's stick in the blue, and we'll go with the teams that are home, right? So we've got Mount Carmel versus Benet, Dan. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, if I don't pick Benet, we can forget about ever stepping foot on campus again. But
that
true. Being said, both these teams have been outstanding offensively all year. Mount Carmel has admittedly played a more difficult schedule, but Benet can be very confident in their 4-0 record and the weapons they have on offense. Bennett's defense is going to have back-to-back challenges against arguably the 2 top quarterbacks in the conference. Yeah, that's arguably, but I'm also interested to see how Luke Doyle, Luke Wilds, and Benet match up against who I think is an outstanding defensive backfield. I know they've had some points scored on them at times, but Cooper Lehman, Javi Payne, and they are a handful. And so it'll be a great test for Benet, and vice versa. Bennett's defensive backs played really well last week, so it'll be interesting to see how they work against Mount Carmel's offense, which has just been awesome all year.
Yeah, it really has, and led by Jack Elliott, who's having an outstanding season so far. One of the things, Benet, I think you mentioned this, Dan. They've started out 4-0 this year. They have not done that, I think, in over a decade, where they start out 4-0. Now they've had 4 wins, right? But starting out 4-0, I think it's been a decade since Benet has done that. And they beat a really good St. Viator team last week.
Yeah.
23-16. They scored all those points in the first half. I don't know if they took their foot off the gas in the second half, maybe. But they've been averaging over 37 points a game so far. Like you mentioned, Ryan Kabaki really playing well at the start of the year here over the first 4 games. Running back Marty Rogowski playing outstanding all over the field on offense, defense, special teams. Their wide receivers, Luke Doyle and Luke Wilds. If there's maybe one weakness that you can point to among Carmel. Maybe it's that they give up a fair amount of points. They gave up a fair amount of points in the first game against the Hun. They gave up 33 points to Naz, 24 to Ignatius last week. So, maybe Bennett's offense is able to put some points up here against Mount Carmel, Dan.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do put up some points, and if there's some big plays back and forth in this game. And
I wouldn't either.
Yeah. And I'm sticking to my guns here. I'm gonna go with Mount Carmel in this game, Joe.
Okay.
I just think their offense might be too much, for Benet this week. But I do see Benet, like some of these other teams before, being able to put up some points.
Yeah. And this game is at Mount Carmel. If it was at Benet, Dan, I might pick the upset here and pick Benet over Mount Carmel because it would be an upset, in my opinion. But I'm going to pick Mount Carmel as well in this game, Dan, and I'll field whatever phone calls or texts that I get from my Benet alumni friends.
Yeah, I'll forward all mine to you too.
All right, perfect. All right, so we both pick Mount Carmel there. All right, let's go to the next game, Dan, and this is the St. Rita Notre Dame game. So St. Rita, they last week beat St. Francis, right? I think it was 31-13.
Yeah.
Yeah, bit of a surprise there. Not that I thought St. Francis was going to win that game, but, considering what St. Francis did the week before, I thought for sure they were going to give a better game to St. Rita. I'm not sure what that says about St. Rita, Dan. Are they that good? Their defense that much better? What do you think as far as this game goes?
Joe, I think if I were to do a power ranking for defenses, I think I might put St. Rita, right at the top.
Okay.
Just they've got a really good mix, and their offense is underrated. Nick Herman at tailback is a guy who can do it all out of the backfield.
Yeah,
runs really hard. It's almost impossible to bring him down for a loss. And I think Steve Armbruster is really underrated as a quarterback, as well as their wide receiver crew of Walter Jones and Lucas Jones. 6'5" wide receiver, really runs really nice routes, very smooth. But Notre Dame has really struggled offensively. And they're going to have to get creative to get guys like Luke Olson and Raya involved. I think because of how ND has struggled offensively, and it being at St. Rita, the pick is St. Rita. I think St. Rita is probably going to win this game. I won't say a blowout or anything because Notre Dame plays really stout defense. But I do see St. Rita, winning this game, maybe by more than a score.
Yeah, I think maybe Notre Dame is, from a points scored against standpoint, might be the lowest in the Chicago Catholic League as far as average number of points. I think it works out to just under 13 points a game. Obviously, their defense is really stout, but as you mentioned, they're really having trouble scoring any points.
Yeah,
and that's going to be a real problem against St. Rita. So, I'm going to go with St. Rita as well on this, Dan.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on to another green versus orange division game, and that's IC against Marist. So Marist goes to IC for this game. Marist is coming off a really tough loss to Joliet Catholic in double overtime, Dan. They lost 31-30 to Joliet Catholic. In a back and forth game, and really just a heartbreaker for Marist. But they went up against a really good team in Joliet Catholic. I see they're coming off. We just mentioned it, right? They're coming off that loss to
Naz.
over St. Rita, right?
Who's that?
St. Francis.
So,
I'm sorry. He's talking about IC. They lost to Naz. You're right. Maybe you should weigh in here, Dan, while I get my thoughts straight.
Yeah, so IC's in a bit of an offensive slump. They scored 27 points in their first game of the season against St. Louis, St. Mary. But since then, 14 points and then a shutout against Naz last week. So, and I really like their running game, especially. I like their running back, sophomore KJ Reese. I think
me too.
Will Brick is a dangerous runner. I'm not their coach, obviously, but I'd like to see them consistently see if they can run the ball, maybe punch a hole in that Marist defense. Marist, is a top 5 Catholic League defense as well, but IC has to see if they can establish something. It's going to be really tough to do. We've got a dog on Marist and Brad Fitzgibbon, one of the dog, and a dog pound member in Josh Laurence, and a host of other talented players. I don't know. IC may have been banged up a little bit last week.
I think they were.
Yeah,
I think they were
missing some guys. So it'd be interesting to see if they're at full strength this week. But Marist continues to get outstanding play from Jacob Ritter at quarterback. I know you love Jacob Ritter, and I think he's a great player. And you've watched them maybe a little more than I have, but they've also got stud wide receivers. Stephen Brown, 2-sport star, basketball and football, and he's coming off a great game against Joliet Catholic. And my pick is for Marist this week. Both these teams coming off tough losses in different ways, but I think Marist wins in maybe what will be a closer game than people think. Now that'll depend on the health of IC as well. Just to see if they get some of their
guys back for sure. Yeah, I heard that there were, there were at least a couple who were out from the week before with, maybe some kind of a concussion protocol, Dan, which made them have to sit out a couple of guys for a week. So, hopefully this week they are back to full strength, but IC hasn't proved to me yet this year that, maybe they've had a lot of different circumstances that have kind of gone against them or kind of weighing against them at this point. But I think that Marist probably comes out on top in this game as well. I know it's at IC, and I'm sure they are itching to get back on track here, considering what the predictions were for them at the beginning of the season, how well they were going to do. But I'm going to go with Marist here as well, Dan.
Yeah, and, one thing I see, just looking at their schedule, they had to scramble to get a game 1, forfeit in game 2 where they won. Chicago Military Academy forfeited for them, so a little kind of fits and starts for them. So we'll see if maybe their third week of normalcy gets them back to what we expected out of IC coming into the season.
I hope so, because it's, as you mentioned, they're supremely talented, right? And, hopefully they get on track here and they really get themselves going on both sides of the ball. I still think Marist is going to win. Hopefully this is another team, Dan, that's, at this point in the season, are they on the bubble here? Then maybe a must win, as far as IC is concerned, because, with the playoffs looming, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be a tough one. I'm sure, just looking at their schedule after Marist, St. Francis, Marmion, St. Viator, and St. Rita. So not easy for IC. So it's a big game. They're one of those backs against the wall teams.
Yeah, they are.
Even at 2-2.
Right. And I hate to say that, that it's a must win and, we're only in game 5 of 5 of the season, but for some reason it kind of feels that way. I'm getting a little anxious for some of these teams.
Yeah, me too.
Right? Yeah. All right, let's move on then to the Nazareth versus Joliet Catholic. This is at Naz on Friday. Both of these teams are coming in 3-1. Joliet Catholic with an absolute thriller of a game last week, beating Marist 31-30 in double overtime. One thing I found interesting, Dan, is Joliet Catholic is 1-6 against Nazareth going back to 2014, and I know last year they played in the state final, right?
Yeah,
and Nazareth beat Joliet Catholic 38-20 in that game. So I'm sure Joliet Catholic has got some kind of redemption on their mind for this game, Dan.
Early in the year we asked Coach Racky, I think in our first interview, who they consider their rivals, and I think there's a lot of teams that consider Nazareth their rival, and he wasn't sure who his players would say. He said it used to be Benet, maybe now IC, maybe St. Ignatius, maybe some other ones, but I bet JCA is right up there, and I wouldn't be surprised if they put a star next to this game. But that being said, Nazareth seems to be just rocking on both sides of the ball, and
they do.
They look to be every bit as good as their ranking in the area. But Joliet Catholic has a way of making things tough for some high-flying opponents. But Nazareth, the quarterback, Logan Malachuk and James Penley on offense, and they've got a dog. So they've got the current dog of the week defensively, and they're really good. Watched a little film. Garrett Reese, Gabe Kaminsky, I thought maybe he wouldn't have as much impact at middle linebacker as he did at defensive end or 5 technique, but he is really good, Joe. And it's funny, they have him at middle linebacker, so I watched kind of their defensive ends. Joe, they've got a sophomore, Chris Caskey, defensive end. He's a big kid. He is really good already. He's just going to be a monster. He's going to be a monster. So, I'm guessing JCA tries to hold the ball, see if they can maintain their intensity coming off that victory last week. And Larry Stringham, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the Catholic League. He runs hard, and he is a perfect fit for the JCA offense.
Yeah, he is, for sure. Yeah.
I also like that he thanked his O-line publicly by name, so I wanted to do the same with Big Jake Jakovich, Elijah Watt, Michael Lynch, Cameron Jurisic, and Malik Salah, who is kind of a tight end, edge blocker who I love. He's a great blocker.
Yeah.
So I think this is the game of the week in the Catholic League. I think it's going to be the one to watch, but my pick is going to be Naz because of just their incredible passing game. I just think it is really, really tough to defend, and their ability to get big plays. So my pick is for Naz, and being at Naz makes a difference too. Naz is a tough place to play.
Yeah, it is. And Naz is so explosive on offense, right? They score or can score from any point on the field and at any time during the game.
They've always been like that.
Always been like that. And I'm not sure Joliet Catholic can match that. I know what they're going to try and do. And you just mentioned Larry Stringham, who, maybe a running back who kind of has flown under the radar until last week, right? Where he rushed for almost 200 yards. He had a couple of touchdowns, the winning touchdown in double overtime, and they're gonna go to him, right? It makes sense, but for Joliet Catholic to try and come back against a team that is so explosive like Nazareth, I think that might be a little bit difficult for them, and they might fall a little short, Dan. So I'm going to go with Nazareth as well over Joliet Catholic. So we are in sync on every game so far, Dan. That's scary.
Okay, that is scary.
Yeah. All right, so next game, how about St. Francis Providence? This game is at St. Francis. St. Francis coming off that tough loss to St. Rita, right? Yeah. What was it, 31-13?
Yep.
Providence they get a nice win against Notre Dame, got them out 14-0. Still a little concerned about Providence on the offensive side of the ball, Dan. It seems like their defense is playing really well. I just don't seem like they're off. It just doesn't seem like their offense yet is really clicking here.
Yeah, and I think they played a sophomore at quarterback last week.
Yeah,
that may have been the first time we've seen him. I don't know. He may have gotten some snaps earlier in the year, so we'll see if he's the starter this week, or whether that was from injury. But yeah, Gavin Hagan for Providence.
Right.
He's a dog pound member this week, and I try to solicit some views from coaches about who I'm considering for the dog pound, or who we're considering, and a coach just said to me, when I asked about Gavin Hagan, he said he's quite simply one of the best players in the state.
Yeah,
and he is, and he's a do-it-all guy. They need some help though. He needs some help on the offensive side of the ball. He probably wouldn't tell you that. He's probably a guy that wants the ball all the time, but they've got the players to do it if they can get him the football. But St. Francis is really dynamic on the offensive end. They killed themselves last week. I felt like they had opportunities. I think they were 0 for 4 or 0 for 5 on fourth down. With some conversions that some were long, but and some were just kind of predicated on where they were in the field. But they've got. I really like their quarterback. And they're young. Brady Palmer, Zach Washington, Gavin Mueller. These guys are really young. They've got their own do-it-all guy, Joe. Tanner Glock just jumps off the video. He's a guy who offense, defense, special teams, plays with an edge. They've got another guy on defense, Joe, that watched a little bit of their film. Sophomore, young guy, James McGrath, kind of an outside linebacker, sets the edge. I really like how he plays as well. So I think because I like this game at St. Francis for St. Francis. I just think they bounce back. I think that they were closer than maybe the score indicated against St. Rita. I felt like that watching the game. So my pick is for St. Francis.
Yeah, I think they bounce back too, Dan. I feel like maybe last week it could have been a bit of a letdown game. After the big win they had the week before. And I think maybe they weren't quite ready to play last week, or hadn't quite but been able to get that big win the week before out of their heads, but and had a bit of a letdown. But I think because this game is at St. Francis, I like Providence and the way their defense is playing. Still a little concerned about their offense. I think St. Francis might have a little too much firepower here for Providence. So I'm going with St. Francis as well, Dan.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see a couple things. If the Tyvon, the running back, is healthy, and
Tyvon Ransom.
Ransom, yeah. If he's healthy, I know he was out of the game at least for a little while. So that'll be interesting to see. And then how I think Providence is their key to their defense is their defensive backfield. So which kind of bodes well against the St. Francis offense. So but
right.
I'm with you, Joe. St. Francis is my pick.
Yeah, and who else in that defense? Another member from the dog pound from last week. That was Dom Infelice, right? Yeah,
that's right.
Lineman.
That's right. Yeah, I like how he plays.
Tough defense. So this may be a defensive battle, but I think Francis might have a little too much offense for Providence to handle.
We'll see.
It's why they play the games, Dan.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, so let's go now to we're down to the purple division, and they are up against the blue division this week, Dan. And one of the games, we already covered the St. Patrick Brother Rice game, but we've got St. Viator and St. Ignatius coming up. So St. Ignatius coming off a tough loss to Mount Carmel, but they gave them all they could handle, Dan. Even though they lost 45-24, they put up over, I think, 300 330 yards total offense against Mount Carmel, which is a ton. They were able to move the ball really well on the ground. So I think they're really clicking on offense with Jack Wanzung, their quarterback. They've got a couple of running backs who are playing really well right now. St. Viator, they lost to Benet 23-16, and we both picked Viator in that game. And I don't know if you were a little bit surprised as to, how their offense performed in that game versus Benet, but I know I was, Dan, considering the firepower that Viator has on offense.
Yeah, I think maybe we're underrating Bennett's defense a little bit.
Maybe
I thought they had a really good game plan. That maybe kind of their defensive backs, like I said, played well, But for this game, I think a problem for St. Viator is that Benet was able to run the ball pretty well against them last week, and that doesn't necessarily bode well. I mean, if you watch St. Ignatius play, you think that of their ability to run the dive, which is kind of the primary play, in the triple option, is great. But man, how they block on the edge, I think is going to be a problem for St. Viator. I just think that those guys just whether it's offensive linemen pulling, wide receivers, running backs leading, they get out on the edge and they can go the distance from anywhere on the field. They are really explosive on the perimeter, and I think that might be a problem for St. Viator. It's the reason why I'm going to pick St. Ignatius.
Yeah.
I just don't see St. Viator being able to consistently stop that potent running attack of St. Ignatius.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Dan. The speed on the edges that St. Ignatius has with the type of offense they run, and their quarterback Jack Wanzung, who's a speedster as well. If he gets out to the edges, I think their running back Liam Hines, who had a great game last week. I think it's probably going to prove to be a little bit too much for St. Viator to handle on defense. We'll see if they get their offense back on track a little bit, over or from last week. But I'm going to pick Ignatius as well in this, Dan.
We are in sync. We're like this week.
Yeah, you'd think we were brothers or something. All right. This next game that we're going to talk about, Dan, is probably the most interesting game to me coming up. Maybe there's going to be better games than this one. I hate to kind of put it that way, but DePaul Prep against Loyola. And this is at DePaul Prep. So DePaul has started out 4-0, and they just trounced St. Patrick last week, 41-0. So DePaul Prep, I feel like both the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, they are really coming together, and they're really starting to gel. Juju Rodriguez, the DePaul Prep quarterback, he's had a couple of outstanding games here. Their wide receivers, Braden Peavy, Matt Osterman, big games, a lot of touchdowns. But they do have a big step up this week in competition, facing Loyola, who's 2-2 after winning last week against Brother Rice. But I really find this game really intriguing to me, and I actually can't wait to see how this game transpires, Dan.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Loyola. Their defense, will be tested again. We're going to see. I thought it interesting. Drew McPherson played on defense last week. We'll see if that continues. I think it probably should. Their defensive backs will be tested. Both him, Donovan Robinson, Mickey Mayer, Charlie Pryor. That group's going to be tested because Juju Rodriguez, he does a great job of spreading the football around.
Right.
He gets a lot of different guys touches. You mentioned some of the receivers. Nick Martinez, more than capable at running back for DePaul Prep, and I think they are going to be flying high. It'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that. They're going to come out with their hair on fire. for the first quarter. And sometimes that can be good or bad. But Joe, I'm going on a limb. I'm picking the upset this week. So I am picking DePaul Prep to win against Loyola Academy at home.
God, I thought I was going to be different from you on this one, Dan.
You did it?
I did. I thought it was going to be different. Ryan Fitzgerald being back.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Makes a huge difference, right? Yeah. The game last week, he threw 4 TDs. I think they have over 250 yards rushing the ball as well. But I think they're maybe vulnerable again to another team here. What DePaul Prep, team on the rise that we've been talking about, team that now believes that they can win any game against any team that they're in right now. I'm picking the upset here as well, too, Dan. I'm picking DePaul Prep at home over Loyola.
We'll see. They're going to get tested. Yeah,
for sure.
A guy in the dog pound last week, stud safety for DePaul Prep, Avery Bellis. He leads the defense coming off a shutout against St. Pat's, and they'll be tested this week for sure. But I think they're going to be up for it. I think it's going to be a great happening here.
All right. So I do as well, and we're in simpatico on all the games so far, Dan.
Wow. Okay.
That's scary.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's move on to the the white division plays the red division this week, and the first game here is St. Laurence and Leo. This is at St. Laurence. St. Laurence, as we talked about maybe a little bit earlier, is now 4-0 after beating Carmel Catholic last week, 17-14. They're one of only 3 of the undefeated teams in the Chicago Catholic League. Leo lost last week to Marian Catholic. St. Lawrence, Dan, has outscored their opponents so far 155-29.
Wow.
Yeah, so that tells you how good their defense is, because they've played some really good teams. St. Lawrence won the matchup last year against Leo. I think it was like 50-8 the score. I think for me, Leo's on a Leo's kind of a program that is building and is going to be on the rise here. But I think it's probably too soon in their building program of their team to face a team like St. Lawrence. So I'm going to go with St. Lawrence in this game, Dan.
Yeah, Joe, me too. I think it's like you said, Leo's getting incrementally better, Joe. And before we forget, we need to do a shout out. We need an edit here of something that we said last week. We put a member of St. Lawrence's defense in the dog pound. Shame on us for not having his name available. And I wanted to make sure that we correct that. So I think.
Yeah. So let's do it right now. So number 4 on St. Lawrence on their defense, linebacker, and he made the dog pound last week and really had an outstanding game that week, is Jacob Bailina, Dan.
Okay. Yep. So Jacob did a great job. You watch that game, you really said he really jumped off the video.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make sure we got that right. But yeah, St. Lawrence is emerging as one of the top teams in the whole Catholic League, let alone the white. And got a really good mixture again, played great complementary football. And, I think this one is St. Lawrence, probably fairly easy.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think, Dan, we've got, let me see. We've got 2 games left. Do you think we're going to pick against each other at any point in these next 2 games? All right, let's see. Let's see. All right, the next game is Montini and Marmion. This is at Montini. Montini lost a tough one last week to Fenwick 14-10, I believe. So they're 2-2 now. Montini's defense is really good, Dan, and we've mentioned that and talked about it. But where they seem to be struggling a little bit is on the offensive side of the ball and scoring enough points to win. Marmion, on the other hand, now they played De La Salle last week. They scored 35 points and 35-0 win over De La Salle. They got their running back, Sean Dahlman, on track. I think he had 3 touchdowns in the first half, for Marmion. But, my concern in this game, at least as far as the two teams go, is whether Montini has enough offense here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, I've been riding the Bronco all year, right?
Yeah.
So I think they're going to. I think it's I'm going to call it a measuring stick game for Marmion. First year of a new program. Coach Guerra has the guys playing really hard, really, really well. They are also trying to really play complementary football. They're trying to use their running game, short passing game to control the clock. I imagine we're going to see more of that this weekend. And like you said, Montini, after scoring 49 in the opening week against Hyde Park, has struggled offensively. Now they played great defenses, but
yeah,
I think they're going to get off the snide a little bit at home. But they've got to get playmakers. We both loved Florio beginning of the year, and I haven't really seen or heard that much about him. I think you have to try and get some of these guys the football, and we'll see what they do at the quarterback position. That's kind of been a shared halves at the QB position. So we'll see if that continues. But I think that they have enough to hold off Marmion. Could be a close game just because of the way Marmion plays, but I think Montini pulls this one out.
Okay, yeah, and Marmion has shown that they can score points. Not sure, on the defensive side of the ball, whether they're going to be able to stop Montini, but Montini hasn't shown me too much or enough yet on offense to prove to me that they're going to be able to score a lot of points here or enough points here. I'm going to go against you on this one, Dan. I know it's at Montini, but I'm going to pick Marmion over Montini.
Okay. Week. All right. There's a difference.
So there we go. Our one difference, because our last game here is Carmel against Marian, and this is at Carmel, Friday night. Carmel coming off a tough loss, Dan, last week, 17-13 to St. Lawrence. It came down to the last 30 seconds of the game. How much would you say a loss like that kind of lingers with you into the next week for Carmel?
They've been on both sides of that, Joe. So they won in the last seconds against Providence, and so now they've been on both sides, and it's good to see interesting to see how if they can even it out a little bit, and they the thing that I notice about Carmel that maybe we don't talk about. We've talked a lot about their quarterback, their defense. Underrated. I really love how their linebackers play. Jordan McKee as a defensive back, is a big time player. So I think they have an outstanding defense, and they swarm to the football, run really well as a group. I think that defense will be too much for Marian. Marian, by the way, gets the Long Ride of the Week award. Going to Carmel, but. Yeah, I think Carmel has just a little bit too much and comes out on top on this one.
Yeah, I think so too, Dan. Carmel's my pick. I do like that Marian. They've got a really good defense. We've talked about that, and they finally were able to put up some points last week against Leo. They scored 33 points, which is their highest scoring output of the year so far. But I'm still not sure on their offense and whether or not they're going to be able to score enough points against a really good Carmel defense, as you mentioned. So I'm with you on this, Dan. I think it's at Carmel. terrible ride for Marian to go from Chicago Heights to Mundelein.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't want to do that. That's why we sit in our basements, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about it rather than drive there. But
Yeah.
I'm going to pick Carmel as well in this. So,
all right.
Yeah, that's all the games. We're
So, Joe, we probably should mention Fenwick, right? Fenwick de La Salle.
oh, yeah. Why don't you mention that, Dan?
Yeah, I'm just under the impression that that game has been forfeited, so which just stinks for everyone involved. No, I don't know if that can change or not. I don't know if it's official or not, but it is. It's really rough. I think it's Fenwick's homecoming, so that is that's tough. If that's the case, again, I have not seen anything official yet.
I haven't seen that yet either. Yeah, I did take a look today. I don't think it would be a huge surprise if that was the case, Dan, considering what's kind of gone on with De La Salle, over their first 4 games this year. But, I actually hope it's not the case, for a multitude of reasons, right?
Yeah, and right, and I think I just hope it doesn't have a lasting impact either for De La Salle. I know that they've got some numbers in their lower level. Coach Blackman's building that program, so I'm hoping that there's no lasting impact. If in fact it is the case. Like I said, I haven't seen anything, just kind of heard through the grapevine.
Yeah, well, we'll let people know, I guess, in our Friday Night Blitz episode coming up this Friday, whether or not that game is taking place, and we'll be covering all the other games as well, Dan, all the Friday night games. We won't be covering the Saturday game, obviously. So everybody, make sure you join us in our Friday Night Blitz episode. You can join us. You can watch us live. We'll be live streaming on X as well as YouTube, possibly Facebook, if we get that working. Plus, we'll send out the link on social media where you can be a part of the audience for Friday Night Blitz, and you can just lurk and chat with us if you want. Yeah, don't lurk feel away. Like we're gonna splash your face all over, all over the whole broadcast or the whole podcast. But
right, no one's taking FaceTime away from us.
No,
I mean, really, let's be serious.
No, come on, look at us.
Right?
Yeah. We got a face for podcasts. Yeah. So anyways, and if you want to go a step further than that too, we always love to have correspondents or reporters from the games just checking in with us and giving us some updates. You can do that in a multitude of ways too. So don't be shy. Don't be shy about joining us on Friday Night Blitz and participating in any way you want. So, yeah, we want to thank you again for listening, joining us in this episode, our Prognosticus episode, our previews and predictions for Week 5, and we will be back again on this coming Friday with our Friday Night Blitz live episode. So make sure you keep listening, like, subscribe, follow us, and we will talk to you soon.